I want to thank you, one, for your time. You've been very gracious to give me time and share your infinite amount of knowledge on this Harahan Bridge project, Charlie. So we're with Charlie Newman, and I was just wanted to ask Charlie, what is your primary role in this project?
Well, back a long time ago, I don't know exactly when, a guy who wanted to remain anonymous, but between you and me is Andy Cates, got interested in creating a trail using the unused right-of-way of the CSX Railroad, which became the Green Line. And Andy worked on that a number of years by himself, and then he got me involved, and he and I worked together for a long time. It took us a long time to get the CSX to agree to that, and they wanted way too much money, and that had to be negotiated, but we finally got that done, and Andy raised the necessary money, and the Green Line was created and basically turned over to Shelby Farms to manage, partly in order to retain Andy's and his other donors' anonymity. As you know, he and his family and some other people here do astonishing things, all of it anonymously, and so let's not breach that. You can edit this film
Sure,
to the extent
sure.
you need to. So we worked on that, and then Charlie McVane, who is just an amazingly generous and talented guy, got in touch with me, I guess because he knew I had worked on the Green Line and had worked on some other things. I had worked on Shelby Farms and the Overland Park Expressway matter and stuff like that. So he contacted me, and he had invented an electric bike called the aerobic cycle. And he was interested in the possibility of extending the Green Line and or creating other recreational trails that could be used for biking and walking and running and so forth. And his initial idea was to see if it was possible to go from downtown Memphis down to the Mississippi Levee and go down the top of the Mississippi Levee with a long trail. And he realized, and we realized, that one of the problems there was that there's no easy way to get from Memphis to the beginning of the Mississippi River Levee down at Walls. No obvious path. And at or about the same time, we discovered that some other guys, including Greg Maxted, who were with a small outfit called, I think, Greater Memphis, something or the other, had been thinking about trying to put a trail across the Harahan Bridge. And as you, I'm sure, have heard from others you've talked to about this, the Harahan was built in maybe 1916 as a railroad bridge. And at the time they built it, they decided, I think sort of as an afterthought, to put outriggers on both sides and to put what they then called wagon ways on the outriggers. And those wagon ways later became automobile ways. Surface was originally wood, and over the years it was improved a bit, but they were outriggers on the north and south side of the Harahan. Until about 1950, that was the only way an automobile could cross the river right here. In 1950, they built the Memphis, Arkansas Bridge, which is the automobile bridge down there. And the surfaces of the Harahan wagon ways were taken up. And for a long time, there were just these steel girders, outriggers on both sides of the bridge, which were unused. In fact, at one point, the guys over in West Memphis thought that the price of steel was such that it would be a good idea to sell those steel girders, and they attempted to do that, and that was blocked by Mr. Crump and others in Memphis. There was a lawsuit that ended up in the Court of Appeals, Federal Court of Appeals, which held that they couldn't do that. Meanwhile, the price of steel went down, and it was no longer so desirable. So that didn't happen. And over the years, there have been other ideas about using those things, but nobody has been able to do it. It took a guy like Charlie McVane, and there are not many people like him, with his abilities and his resources and his strength to get it done. And the history of the project since Charlie got interested in doing that has been long and tortuous, and he has overcome a number of obstacles, any one of which could have been a deal killer. The first thing he did, which was in some ways the most remarkable thing he did, was organize or get a couple of airplanes and take a bunch of Memphians to Omaha to meet with the CEO of Union Pacific Railroad, which owns the bridge. And railroads have no business interest in doing this kind of thing. They, just as the CSX Railroad had no real interest in allowing the Green Line to take place, the Union Pacific had no reason to really want to do this. And so Charlie's ability to persuade the CEO to bless the project was pretty remarkable. Even then, though, after the top guy in the railroad had given it his blessing, the middle level and lower level management of the railroad, quite understandably and properly, had every kind of concern you can imagine about it, and they wanted it to be done in a way that absolutely reduced to zero the risk and any risk and cost to the railroad. So we have spent many years dealing with and overcoming and satisfying the railroad's concerns. There was also the matter, obviously, of money. It was going to be expensive. And Charlie, with the help of Congressman Steve Cohen, did another remarkable thing. They got a so-called federal Tiger grant. And these are grants made by the U.S. Department of Transportation. Now, very few are given each year, and there's hot competition for them. And it was a huge accomplishment to get one for this. We got about a $15 million one. It was then necessary to get feasibility studies done, the feasibility and the cost of doing the project. And Charlie, with much of his own money, hired an engineering firm that was expert in such matters to conduct a feasibility study and to help us, in fact, prepare the application for the Tiger grant, which was an essential element in getting that done. And then after we got the Tiger grant, in satisfying the railroad's concerns and going through all the engineering and technological issues that are involved in doing this. Finally, we got a basic agreement between the railroad and the city of Memphis and Crittenden County. The bridge, of course, in crossing the river goes from, at some point, there's the Tennessee-Arkansas line, and the city of Memphis owns the outriggers. I neglected to say, I'll mention that in a minute, but the city of Memphis owns the outriggers up to the line, which is in the middle of the road, and Crittenden County owns the other part. I neglected to say that back in 1916 or whenever it was, when the wagonway was created, the railroad sold to the city of Memphis and to Crittenden County the outriggers and the wagonway. 40% of it is in Memphis, 60% of it is in Crittenden County. So anyway, getting back to where I was, at that point when we had obtained the federal grant and Charlie had persuaded the relevant local governments and private donors to come up with the additional money necessary to build the project, construction began. The construction itself has involved the discovery of numerous problems along the way. As you would imagine, old girders of that sort had to be inspected more carefully than was possible right at the beginning of the project, and as they went along, they found more and more problems that needed to be fixed. But construction got going and has proceeded, and has just recently been basically completed. Meanwhile, a lot of people said, why do we want a thing like that? It's a bridge to nowhere. There's nothing over there that anybody in Memphis needs to, or particularly wants to go see. And Charlie began then to talk with the board, the St. Francis Levee Board, which has control of the levees on the Arkansas side of the river, and which go down to Louisiana and beyond. The levee board initially was 100% unanimously opposed to having this done because they had the responsibility forever of maintaining and operating those levees for the benefit of the landowners and as a flood control measure, and had not therefore allowed much other use of it. But again, with Charlie's enormous persuasive power, and with the help of a very progressive and visionary guy named Steve Higginbottom, who was chairman of the St. Francis Levee Board, persuaded the board to vote unanimously to allow a bicycle trail right down the levee to at least 72 miles to Mariana. So as soon as the bridge, the Harahan Bridge, the Big River Crossing is what it's called, boardwalk over the Harahan Bridge is completed and opened, it'll be possible to go across, take a left down the levee, and go immediately 72 miles or so to Mariana. There's also discussion of doing the same thing up north to Wilson, Arkansas, and that'll happen, I'm confident, eventually. And down beyond Mariana, the levee goes on, of course, all the way down to Louisiana and beyond. Meanwhile, New Orleans is in the process of building and has built many miles of a trail going from New Orleans up to Baton Rouge, and other local governments in Louisiana are doing the same. So I once thought this was not likely to occur in anybody's lifetime, but now I think the time will come before anybody realizes it. It'll be possible if you've got the strength and the energy to ride your bike all the way from Memphis across the bridge and down to New Orleans or up to Wilson. And one other thing that Charlie and others working with him have managed to do is there is land between the Harahan Bridge and the two bridges that are joining the Frisco and the Memphis, Arkansas on the south, and the I-40 bridge, known as the Hernando de Soto Bridge on the north. And everything you see, if you stand on the river bank in Memphis and look across between those bridges, is floodland that has been used since time immemorial for agricultural purposes and is undeveloped because it's undevelopable. And Charlie and his son Dow, who I would say also has played just a remarkable role in getting all these things done. And Dow's taken the lead on in recent times on all this. But they have persuaded the landowners over there to permit initially the creation of about 7 or 7.5 miles of trail winding through that property. And ultimately the hope is to turn that whole area into a park, or sort of a Shelby Farms West, but probably with very little development, because again that land floods. So that in short is the project. Meanwhile, another group of people independently decided to offer anonymously to light the Big River crossing on the Harahan Bridge and to replace the lighting on the Hernando de Soto Bridge, which is in a state of disrepair and badly in need of replacement. And working for a number of years and going through a number of possible alternatives and different companies, they made arrangements with the company that is the most famous and most respected public structure lighting company on earth, Philips Lighting of North America, which is really a global company based in Europe, and which lit the Empire State Building and the Bay Bridge in San Francisco, and is far and away the leading company in those kinds of huge public lighting projects using state-of-the-art LED lights, which are programmable and are capable of 16 million plus colors and being controlled by computers to change colors and to move and so forth. Arranged for Philips to do that. And that whole project has itself been a difficult and long and complicated project, again requiring the approval of the railroad, which had more concern about those lights than one might imagine, because that's a heavily used and very important railroad bridge, and the railroad had to be fully satisfied that the lights would present no problem to the railroad, and we've only recently gotten railroad approval for that. The relighting of the Hernando Bridge is something that has not yet been fleshed out, but is something that the donors are willing to finance, and which we hope to be able to successfully do.
So your role has been primarily not only as friend to the project and to Mr. McVeigh, but also as legal counsel primarily?
Yeah, although very little, comparatively little of it has required legal expertise. A lot of it has just been something that required management and moving forward and dealing with an amazing number of obstacles and problems.
So do you have an official title in the project?
Oh, no, I don't think so.
Okay. What do you see as the main economic benefit? What kind of the vision, future, Charlie, what do you think people aren't really talking about? What do you think we'll be talking about, 30, 40 years from now about this project?
Yeah. Well, I think that it's widely recognized now that in order to attract and retain large businesses of the sort that are desirable for cities and counties and states, it's necessary to provide these kinds of amenities. I think they're very attractive. We went, Charlie McVeigh and Dow McVeigh and I and others went over to Arkansas to meet with the Arkansas governor some time ago to get the state of Arkansas's participation in this. And we met with the economic development head for Arkansas. And the first thing he told us was that when he wanted to recruit a new business with highly educated young employees, the first two questions they asked were, how many bike trails do you have and how many microbreweries do you have? And whether or not that's quite literally true, it is, I think, demonstrably true that the kinds of companies that cities and counties and states now need are very much attracted to that kind of thing.
I'm gonna edit this because my battery's down, but I'm going to say because I can edit this back in, but I wanted to thank you, Mr. Newman, for your time and for just as a citizen of Memphis for your work on this project and how incredible I've been up there, how incredible this is going to be for not only our citizens but globally, just people, tourists all over the world that will enjoy this.
Thank you, and although I've given primary credit to Charlie and he deserves it, there have been other generous donors who have stepped up to the plate and made this possible.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, so I want to go back just to ask you a question. My battery might die if it does.
All right.
But
Okay.
what about the? Did y'all have any other places that you looked at, cities, bridges that kind of give you an idea for the thought and vision behind this? I mean, there aren't any other places like this, are there?
Well, there are trails all over the place, and there are trails over bridges. I don't think there's one across the Mississippi River, certainly not one this long. But there are trails on bridges in a number of places. Little Rock has got several. Of course, the river there is much more narrow, but they've got a number of.
The Big Dam Bridge, is that
Big Dam Bridge is the most well known, yeah. And all over the country, the creation of bike trails is, of course, something that's happening.
What economic benefit do you see? And when you first heard about this, what was your reaction to this news?
Well, I thought it was with the Green Line, I thought that sounds good and be a nice thing to do. But it was not until the Green Line was actually created and was visible and usable and in place, concrete, that I realized really what a catalytic effect it was going to have. It was the first such dedicated trail, and Memphis flocked to it in a way that I would not have expected. I think none of us did. We all thought it sounds like a good idea, let's do it. But the reaction to it has been overwhelming. And I think this may be the same way and even more so. No question but that this project was inspired by the Green Line, and in turn I think this is going to be a pretty spectacular thing. The views there, I don't know if you've been up there yet, but the views are pretty amazing. And
Okay. So, economic benefit you see to this?
well, again, keeping and attracting new businesses of the sort that employ well-educated and highly paid people is the primary one. But I think it's hard to really trace all the kinds of benefits. In my view, the mere fact that we have it, which cannot be, you can't put a price on it, and it's whatever its economic benefit, it's other benefits as in the way it contributes to the quality of life and the pleasure of living in Memphis is enormous. I've been impressed with the number of people in their 30s and 40s and 20s in Memphis who could live anywhere, literally anywhere, and who find something about Memphis that they like and that attracts them here. And I think this kind of recreational amenity is one thing that does. There are lots of other things, but
Thank you, Mr. Newman. I appreciate your
Sure.
time
Thank
and
you.
your work on the project.
Thank you. I appreciate it.